Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, episode number 133. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, just getting over a wretched cold that really laid me low for a few days. This week's show is devoted entirely to the first Skepticamp here in Sydney, Australia, which was held last weekend. A huge success, and hats off to Jason Brown and the volunteers for putting it all together. So most of the show this week is in the hands of Maynard, who was running around like a man possessed with his microphone, grabbing interviews here, there and everywhere. And that's followed by my presentation on what it means or what it takes to be a skeptic, what you have to learn and what you have to go through. So, I'm going to get a nice cup of lemon tea to help me soothe my throat and beat the last dregs out of this cold while you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Welcome to Skepticamp Sydney 2011! The first ever Skepticamp Australia!
Well, I've got my good underwear on today, I tell you, because it's Skepticamp, where a whole bunch of skeptics are coming together to do, I don't know, is it Skepticamp like in an Adam West kind of way? So everyone's going, let us talk about the possibility of physics, Robin.
It's not quite the Adam West kind of camp that you're thinking of. More the bar camp kind of a thing. This is where it came from originally. Bar camp is a tech thing, a community conference where people just turn up and bring their own presentations and chat and talk and generally something for the grassroots skeptics.
This is like sort of a larger version of what you do in Newtown at the pub?
This kind of is, yeah, the Newtown thing at the pub, drinking skeptically, which you should come to, by the way.
Look, if I wasn't 100 miles away, I would.
Yeah, the Newtown thing's really informal. This has got a little bit more formality, and we've got projector screens, which is kind of good.
Wow. And what, are you going to be talking today, or you've just done enough organising the whole thing? You're a drained man. I'm
fairly drained, but I'm all right. I've had a few coffees. I'm good. If there's time, the attendees should get the first slots, but if there's a gap, I'm going to talk about Skepticamp and try and get Melbourne happening.
Well, yeah. Now, what are you expecting today to see here? What are you trying to unearth in the skeptical movement in Sydney that maybe we haven't seen before?
Well, we want to give the people that don't normally have the coverage a chance to have a chat. So skeptics maybe that haven't got up in front of an audience before and talked, they might have ideas that they want to share and something that we've never heard, maybe. We might get the same kind of stuff that we normally get. We might not. Yeah. But that's the fun of it.
Is there something you'd like to see people talk about here that hasn't been raised before? What's a topic that you bury in the back of your mind and go, gee, I wish they'd get some entanglement talk going?
Oh, that would be kind of nice, a nice quantum-y kind of a talk. What quantum effects actually are, rather than what Deepak Chopra tells you they are. That would be kind of nice. Maybe I'll do that for the next one. We've got some nursing topics happening, which is quite good. We've got, hopefully we're going to get one on bipolar disorder. Which will be really interesting, and some other jolly ones too.
Now, look, I was talking to a critic of skeptics last night, and he said, look, they always go for these power band things, these scam things. Why don't they go and do something useful, like, go overseas and help the people in Haiti or something like that, which is a pretty long bow. And what would you answer to that? I mean, because, you're dealing with scams, you're not... Yeah, how would you deal with that? Yeah.
Well, I'd say a lot of us do that already, but we don't do it with a Skeptics T-shirt on. We just do that for ourselves. And there are a lot of sort of atheist charities as well that do it, So, yeah, we do that as well. Why can't we do both? Is this a problem for people?
For me, this is a like-minded philosophy, a group with people with like-minded philosophy getting together for the day.
It is, but also we want to kind of reach out and make the community more effective and more thoughtful. I guess, ultimately. We are talking to the converted, but we want them to go out and spread skepticism.
You're going to give them the pointy stick to poke at people. What's your favourite target at the moment? I know the AVN's always on your list there.
The AVN has been a major target of mine for a while. But probably homeopathy is still a big thing with the 1023 campaign. And just sort of general nonsense, really. I get annoyed at some of the stories in the media that pop up about, astrologers and this and that and the other.
Anyway, look, you got work to do. It's the beginning of the day. Have your fun there.
Thanks, Maynard.
Now, look, we're here at Skepticamp, and one of the sceptical people's Peter here. You just did a great talk in there about stuff I hadn't heard of and I hadn't been aware of your adventures in the legal world of what were you? Was it libel, slander, defamation?
No.
What have you been taken to court for?
I was taken to court. They claimed I was damaging their business by what I said about it.
And how many times is this used to silence criticism of shonky or allegedly shonky products?
Oh, I think it's probably the standard way now because corporations can't sue for defamation. So what they say is, well, you've damaged our sales. So you haven't damaged our reputation, you've damaged our sales. Now, all you've got to do is prove that they lost one sale. The court even only awards you $1 damages and says, forget about it. You might be stuck for their legal costs.
So in a nutshell, what's the way to avoid that? In 15 minutes here, you covered your story, but what about us talking on the microphone here? What's the best way to avoid being in court with an unattractive barrister and it may be an unresponsive judge?
Yeah, I think probably, as I said in there, Try to be correct when you say things, so don't make stuff up. Make sure you research before you speak about it. Try as little as possible to mention people's names, I suppose, although that's obviously difficult. I mean, if I start talking about Australia's second largest telecommunications company, I'll have Optus over the top of me. I don't have to mention their name. No, sorry, Optus, I'm not. Nothing wrong with Optus. I think really it's just a matter of being careful. I made out of that. I had been generally a little bit more robust in what I said than I should have been. But so now I just back off a bit. But I'm a little bit more careful, make sure I'm right, check a little bit more with stuff. And if I'm really worried about it, I might even ask a lawyer.
And just to give us an idea of the costs involved, you mentioned a barrister. How much is a barrister per day for this kind of thing if you get involved in it?
Oh, you could spend $2,000 or $3,000 a day if you go for a really expensive one. I mean, in this particular case, I had a barrister which was working at a reasonable price. It was a friend of mine. But the solicitor still hit me with an enormous bill. They had to pay for it. It was from a major law firm. The other side had Australia's second or third largest law firm acting as solicitors. And that's why we figured that because we knew what their prices were, or my lawyers did, and that's why they come up with this $250,000.
So obviously it's affected what you say as a sceptic. Has it made you a bit gun-shy about even firing a bullet in the first place?
No, not really. I'm just more careful about the way I say things now. I try to keep the inflammatory language down. So I will say, maybe that is not quite the truth, rather than you are lying.
Now, what's the area that interests you most? Is it pyramid schemes? And what is the difference between a pyramid scheme and a Ponzi scheme, by the way? Because a lot of people have heard of them.
Yeah. Well, a Ponzi scheme is a financial scheme where dividends and interest is paid out of the money that comes in. So you've got to keep getting more and more people in to pay the dividends out.
Because you're probably the main deposit's already gone.
That's right. But you raise $1 million, you're paying people 10%. You've got to pay out $100,000 in the first year. If you aren't investing it, that's got to come out of that money. So you have to keep increasing. Pyramid scheme is essentially, but there's a legal definition of pyramid scheme. But what they are really is one where you have to bring other people into the organisation to do the selling for you. They bring other people in. They bring other people in. And the theory is that everyone can make huge amounts of money. The fact is they don't. An interesting thing with this case, they forced me to put a statement on my website about how wonderful, I was being sued, and how wonderful multi-level marketing was in Australia. And they actually said that it was, I forget the exact numbers now, but it worked out to $2,400 per year gross sales per person in any of those schemes. But they only get about 2% commission. So that means the average person working for a multi-level marketing organisation in Australia, they're going out every night, showing the plan, annoying your friends and neighbours, wearing teeth, getting your teeth whitened to look good and having a fancy car, their average income is $48 a year. That's less than 3 hours. That's 3 hours at the minimum wage.
Is there a profile of a person who's attracted to these schemes? Is there a profile of the person who loves a get-rich-quick scheme?
I think there are. They prosper, these organisations, in when the times are tough. Because they'll come along and say, well, we can make you wealthy, independently wealthy. Don't work for a boss, work for yourself.
I noticed just after the financial crash there was a lot of those ads on telly for certain things like that, yeah.
But it's interesting that the best-known multi-level marketing organisation in the world, when one of the founders died, he was the 231st richest person in the world. But I've been told by people multiple times with that well, don't work for your boss, don't make your boss rich, make yourself rich. Where did his money come from? So 99.9% I think of people who go into a multi-level marketing scheme actually lose money. This particular scheme that I was talking about, it was $500 entry fee. You got 1% of the sale of telephone calls that you put through your system. That's a lot of telephone calls to get you $500 back.
So what I'm seeing here is that people aren't doing any independent investigation of their own. They're completely going on the what's it called, when testimonials.
Oh, that's right. Testimonials. Another one. There's an organisation in America called the Direct Marketing Association, and I comment at one stage it's board of directors looks like a who's who of scammers. Now they actually come out and they produce this enormous amount of money that people are putting through these schemes in Australia. There's 200 companies in the Direct Marketing Association. Their total turnover in the United States is, I think, about $10 billion more than Coles does it by itself in Australia. Wow. Now, Coles is operating in an economy of 21 million people, one country. So 300 million people in the US, 200 companies are turning over a little bit more than Coles. But we've been told that every time I had the spiel to me, within 5 years, 50% of retail will come through this. No, it won't. But that's what people say. They can't do the arithmetic. They see a big number. Like I was told, there's $1.5 billion goes through multi-level marketing in Australia. It's divided amongst 500,000 people. That's not a lot of money when you divide it up.
So your message is do the maths and mind your legal language.
Both of those, yeah, that's right, yes.
Now, is putting alleged in front of something helpful or not? Like an alleged scam artist, an alleged liar. Does that actually help you?
I don't think so. It's funny, you actually will hear some of these news broadcasts where they'll use the word alleged about 6 times in the one sentence as they describe somebody. And they'll show somebody who's actually arrested at they've crashed their car drunk. And they'll say, the alleged drunk driver, they're carrying this guy off and his feet are dragging on the ground because he's unconscious. Apparently, a lot of the media think that it's correct. I don't know whether it does or not.
I like using it for humour value, like the alleged comedian.
That's right, yes, that's right.
And now what about if someone says, in my own opinion or something? Does that protect you as well? Because you're only saying it's your opinion, you're not.
You can. That was going to be the approach that with Simon Singh, that he said it was an opinion, but he wanted to argue on the fact that it wasn't opinion, it was fact. But one of the things I did in this case was I actually went back and changed all the pages on my website that talked about people to say at the top, opinion. I learnt while the case was going on, so I'd go back and make changes. So any page on my website where I talk about a company or any organisation with a link to their website, I actually always says on the top that it's opinion.
And just how boring is it being in court for something like one of these white-collar things? Is it, even when you're the subject of it, is it really dull?
Oh, yeah. And half the time the lawyers are talking to each other. But the other thing is you all turn up and then they decide to put it to another day. So we'd all come in. I think I set off the alarm at the security at the federal court 6 times out of the 7 times I went there.
Just to wake yourself up?
I do things like it. Just set off. It wouldn't matter what it was. I got to the point where I just walked through and walked straight across the guy with a wand and put my arms up. You'd go in and they'll all snap and say, look, we're not ready today. Then they spent 10 minutes looking at diaries. And then they say, we'll adjourn and we're back in 3 weeks. And so we're all over in 10 minutes. Well, what did I waste half a day out of my work for?
Well, maybe someone like you that's been in court can answer this question about law and order. Whenever I say law and order, they've always got so-and-so, and they've got a part 7. Now, what does that part mean? Does that mean that's a different day, or what does that mean?
No, that one's actually the US, the New York Supreme Court.
Yeah,
it's I think it's the room it's in.
Part 7 is the room it's in?
I think it's the room, yeah.
Well, there you go. I'll never watch that show like the same again. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Who have we got here that I was just very intently listening to in the small room? And you only got the small room here at Skepticamp.
Yes. So I'm Ian Woolf, and I do the Diffusion Science Radio podcast.
And what are your qualifications? It sounds like you've certainly spent some time in a room with a couple of lecturers in your life.
I have a degree in applied physics, and I've also taught in computing.
And look, I was particularly interested in when you were chatting about thorium there, because a few weeks ago I did a chat with Professor Jamieson in Melbourne about thorium, and I found it very intriguing. And you haven't heard that podcast, but maybe I wasn't asking the right questions as a layman, because he's quite pro-thorium and that we perhaps should get into it. What do you think about Australia's involvement in the potential thorium nuclear industry?
Well, thorium's interesting because there's a lot of money in thorium. All the uranium mines are digging up thorium. At the moment, it's a waste material. Thorium has storage issues because it produces radon gas and because it's radioactive for billions of years. Like, it's longer than any other radioactive material that we handle. When you make a reactor out of thorium, you're actually firing neutrons on it and transmuting it into uranium-233. And you can also transmute it into plutonium-239. So it's the uranium or the plutonium that actually fission and produce energy, but they can also be used in nuclear weapons. So it's pretty good for proliferation.
So we would be no better off using thorium as a fuel, apart from it's probably a bit more abundant?
It's way more abundant. Well, 4 or 5 times more abundant, but I think we'd have major problems storing the stuff because of all the radon gas and the radiation.
What do you think people have suddenly taken an interest in it, as I did, because of what happened in Japan, and thinking, is there a safer nuclear alternative, and people are looking at that?
Absolutely. It's being pushed as a safer nuclear alternative. I'm not totally convinced it is. I'm still looking into what the reactions are that produce the waste, because the claims are that the waste isn't as radioactive for as long. Or it's more radioactive but for less time.
Now, you're preparing a story on your podcast. Obviously, you've got a lot of reading to do yet. About how long before that story will come to fruition? And again, where can we find your podcast?
Probably about a month before I've got that story ready, and you can find Diffusion on www.diffusionradio.com.
And what advice have you got for someone like me who comes into these high-end science projects as a layman, that even if I researched it, about atmospheric physics or atomic physics, how should you approach this? Because I really have to accept the voice of authority there, because I can't really argue with them.
Well, one of the things is to look if there's more than one article on the subject. What I found online is that almost everyone points at the same New York Times article. And if there's only one source, then there's a bit of suspicion. And he mentions there's downsides, but he doesn't say what they are. So you should always find out what are the downsides and where does the information come from and who's going to make money from it.
So it's a little bit like a news story when you're watching Channel 7 or Channel 9. It's not so much what they're saying, it's who's telling you sometimes.
It can be who's telling you, and always seek out more sources.
Look, just before the lunchtime rush here, I'm trying to get a bit of a chat into some of the Australian skeptics selling their merchandise. They've got their usual things here, and the man holding up his sign allegedly claims to be Tim Mendham. Hi, Tim.
I believe I am. How are you, Maynard?
I'm pretty good now. How's the merchandise been selling here? Because, everyone knows that the Australian skeptics live and die completely on their merchandise.
Absolutely. That's the only way we survive. This stuff is selling like hotcakes. We've got hotcakes over there, actually.
So people are eating the T-shirts?
Absolutely, they are, actually, with a bit of, I'm going to say maple syrup on top of it, something like that, yeah.
Now, what do you make of this event? Because, you've been around the skeptical traps. How does Skepticamp skeptically size itself up as a skeptical event?
It looks pretty good, actually. It's the first one they've had, I think, certainly in Sydney. And I like the fact that all the speeches are about 10 minutes long. Makes life a lot easier, actually. And then you get questions and things. It's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, what I've seen of it, if I'm not out here selling hotcakes.
Now, are you chatting today?
Yes, I am, actually. I've got one after lunch. I'm chatting on the media.
Okay, now, as sort of partially a member of the media there, we have a lot of difficulty handling science. I was just talking earlier to Ian there about the thorium reactor issue, which I did a story on the Skeptic Zone not so long ago, and people like myself who are skilled in interviewing, and even if I read the background material on the physics involved in thorium reactors, I'm still not going to get a grip on it. And so how can any media person be across so many scientific disciplines and come up right?
Impossible, basically. You've got to rely on the talent you're interviewing. They're the ones who are selling their story to you, I think, and if they're not a good presenter, they shouldn't be doing it. And that's what my speech is about, actually, that if you're going to put your foot in your mouth, don't do it.
What are the warning bells that the person who's presenting to them is coming to you with an agenda?
Most of them do. If they keep wrangling the conversation around a particular area or towards a particular sort of topic.
And you notice talking points.
That's right, yes, talking points, yes. Make sure you repeat the message 3 times. It's what you're told in PR land.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, make sure you get those, and you have 3 key messages you want to get across, even if they're not asked.
Right. Never any more than that. Like, can you have 5 key messages, like with a joke? Things go in 3 or 5s. Is it an odd number with messages as well?
It has to be an odd number. Same as if you're describing something as big, large and yellow, you've got to have 3. You can't have 4, you can't have 2. Got to be 3.
Wow.
It's part of life's nature's balance.
Now, what's the problem with having just one message in a story or something? I mean, knowing it's big tells me that it's a problematic thing.
It depends on what length of interview you want, actually.
Let's.
They're selling like hotcakes, and if that's it, that's the only message I've got to say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the typical story we might run on the Channel 7 on Channel 9 News. The length is 3 to 4 minutes, right. And they'll lots of nice, pretty pictures, a bit of stuff from the journalist, and you'll probably get 3 or 4 grabs from the interview subject, no more than 15 seconds long. Would that be?
3 or 4 grabs are quite lucky, I think. Actually, the ones I always love on those sort of programs is when Bill Bloggs said it's a big object, and they cut to Bill Bloggs and showing him saying it's a big object, and then they cut back to the story again. You think, why? Why bother doing that? Yeah, that happens all the time.
And would partially that be because of people's attention span? You're preparing them to hear the guy say the same thing, whereby if you just had the grab of him, they might not absorb it. I mean, am I thinking people are stupider than they really are?
Do you want me to answer that? Rupert Murdoch once said that half the population is below average intelligence, which is an interesting observation, but that's what he built his empire based on.
Yeah, well,
there's a big market out there, people who have trouble understanding these issues.
Yeah, you're talking about the guy who paid a lot of money for MySpace, but...
That's right, that's very true. Very true.
How's that going, Rupe?
That's pocket money for him, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And what are you hoping will come out of today? Are we getting people who are new to the skeptical movement coming in? Are we affirming being part of a community here? What's happening sociologically?
Sociologically is great. I think what I've seen over the years, and here I am talking like an old fart, is basically that...
That's okay, because you know, like me, you look a bit like one too.
Thank you. I won't say anything else about it. Is basically the whole sort of movement has changed over the years. There used to be sort of magazines and things like that, hard copy, and communication was very limited in that way. Nowadays, it's all over the place. It's all the social media. It's all the the blogging and the Facebooking. That's what these guys do. I mean, they're in there right now tweeting like crazy, right? And that spreads the message so quickly. That is fantastic. It suddenly has become an extremely active and activist organisation.
What worries me about Twitter, not so much Facebook, but it's pretty much, is it can be just a big echo chamber of a lot of people saying something and no one really reading anybody else's tweets.
Yeah. I mean, the number of sort of tweets you might be following is sort of far above what you can actually sort of read. And fortunately, most of the things on Twitter aren't worth reading, which is handy. Filtering them out is the hard thing.
Now, what would be the ideal skeptical product if you could have something to table here for the Australian skeptics? In the ideal world, the imaginary world, what would be the killer skeptical product you'd like to be having on sale here?
Probably the head of an anti-vaccination person. That would go very well. You have to charge a bit for it. Ben Spoons.
Well, look, I'm here with someone who is perhaps the most divisive issue of the day would have to be Cupcake Camp. Who have we got here, and what's going on at that table behind us?
All right, well, my name's Bea, and here we have Cupcake Camp. And a whole bunch of people have brought cupcakes in, and everyone's going to try a couple and vote on their favourite.
Right, so have you, is it a double-blind kind of test? Is there a chance that we could get a skewed result from this?
I would say so, yes. We do have lots of placebo cupcakes lying around as well.
What, so ones that have got a bland taste to them, or what? Yeah, what's a placebo cupcake? Is it one you eat that doesn't make you fat, or it thinks it makes you fat? I don't know. How do you work it?
I would love a cupcake that didn't make me fat, but unfortunately, I don't think we've discovered that yet.
I think you can make them low-fat and without much sugar, but I don't think anyone bought them, and that company went out of business very quickly.
That's right. You don't win Cupcake Camp by making sugar-free cupcakes.
Well, I hope I can talk to the winner later. Just as an inside running, what ones do you reckon might be looking good?
I've got my eye on Ruth Ellison's Choc Bailey's cupcakes. She is a master.
Is that the ones with the huge Smarties on top?
Oh, no. The ones with the little swirl, but the ones with the huge Smarties look delicious as well. Okay, well, it's really quite even.
Look, I'll get in there and see what a few of the people think. Thank you. Well, I'm now approaching the table. There's a lot of people sniffing, touching. No one spitting out the cupcakes as you would in a red wine competition. Excuse me, sir. Now, why have you chosen those in the Cupcake Camp competition? buy those too?
This has Baileys in it, you know. Anything with an alcoholic kind of tinge.
I'm not going to get an argument from that. And what's the other one? That looks a bit flattened and dull, but that could have a great taste inside it.
Visually not the best on the table, but you know you've got to give it a chance. Jaffa orange as well.
Okay, well you enjoy yourself there. Now, you're doing a double blind test. You're going to
I'll close my eyes when I eat it. How about that?
Thank you. Oh, look, I'm here just in the empty lecture theatre where I can see a bedraggled man, half-dressed, looking on the floor for coins to pick up. That man is Richard Saunders. Looking for donations for the show. Richard, how are you?
Maynard, hi. Sorry, I just saw a 5-cent piece over there. I thought I'd better grab it quick.
Every cent counts for the production of the Skeptic Zone.
It does, mate, it does.
Now, what have you thought of what's been going on today? I've seen you in the small room doing a bit of moderating in there. Have we had anything left of centre? You know what I'm like. I'm looking for the earthquake machine theory. I'm looking for some real crackpot stuff today, and we just ain't getting it yet.
We've got Casey the Wonder Dog, who's right there.
That's true. She is an anomaly. As far as a guide dog goes, she's an anomaly. She doesn't make much noise, but that's a problem. You don't want her to bark. And we've got Steve there. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. How are you, Maynard?
Pretty good. Now, Casey's been behaving herself, and as it's lunchtime, she's been looking at everyone's sort of ham rolls like she really wants them. But because she's working till you get home, she can't have anything to eat, can she?
No, and when you were eating your lunch, she was laying down in front of me, and I could see her tail swishing as she was watching, going, I would quite like some of that.
See, and under normal circumstances, I'd see a dog and feed them, but I know she's working today. So exactly.
About ham rolls.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't. This is the second day of my vegan challenge, you see.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, that's right. So as well as teasing the dog, I'm teasing Mr. Saunders by saying we had a ham roll. Now, you're not a vegan, are you, Steve?
No. Oh, you saw me. I had a ham and a chicken roll. I'm very much a meat eater.
And look, how actually is it going on the vegan diet? It's only 2 or 3 days, is it?
It's 2 days, and it's fine. I'm having no trouble with it at all, although I cannot, in all honesty, recommend a flat white with a soy milk instead of real milk. But
look, I've had that and enjoyed that. Look, last night I was watching a documentary on the History Channel where they were talking about the end of Hitler's life in the bunker, and they were painting him as him being a very strange and unusual person, which is probably an understatement. But one of the things they brought up was the fact that, he had unusual habits, like he was a vegetarian.
That's right.
I thought, of all the things to say about Hitler in the negative, I don't know if vegetarianism would be the first thing I'd bring up.
And I don't think he wasn't a drinker either. I think he was a teetotaler, I think.
Oh, well,
there you go.
There you go. If they'd mentioned he was a teetotaler and a vegetarian, they go, well, no wonder he lost the war.
No wonder.
But I just thought it was a very strange thing to bring up in a doco. He was a vegetarian as being an odd thing.
Oh, as being an odd thing?
Yeah, it's like, well, he had some strange habits, like he was a vegetarian.
Not that he did all those terrible things. But today, just getting back to today, what a great success it's been so far. Yeah. I'm talking later on, and that's when the day will go downhill, obviously.
Yeah, well, I'll be in the audience. I'll be up the back going, bullshit, stuff like that, so watch out for that.
I bring my own heckler wherever I go, and I'll be talking about how to be a skeptic.
Yeah, well, look, you've got a lot of grassroots skeptics here. Like, you might get a bit of hubbub. They might go, well, that's what you think. And people will throw bits of paper at you.
Or they could throw fruit at me, or vegetables.
But no ham rolls.
But no ham rolls.
Yeah. So if people want to offer you cash to do other things for a couple of days, what are you up for?
Well, they can write to the Skeptic Zone and offer to donate something towards the zone and ask me to do something, and I will consider all offers. I'm saying that I will do them, but I'll consider them.
That's cool. Well, look, have a good day there. I'm going to get out there and just see if I can get some food the dog hasn't taken away.
Thank you, Maynard.
Once again, I've ruined someone else's lunch here at Skepticamp. Who have we got here?
Thank you for that. Ishai Sagi. I'm from Canberra, Australia.
You were in there chatting to people. Now, what was your 15-minute specialty topic?
I talked about the Middle East, the media, how media treats the Middle East conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, how religion fuels the Middle Eastern conflict, and how those kind of things drove me into skepticism and into, in being involved with the skeptics at a whole.
Wow. So did you have time to get into the Libya, Egypt and all that, or the 15 minutes didn't have enough time for that?
Well, I can't really speak about the Libya and Egypt stuff because I wasn't personally involved. My personal story was how I, as a soldier in the Israeli army, went to the occupied territories in 2001, seen some things, and then went back to read about it in the media, which was two different types of reporting. One said that I was the most moral person ever, and one saying that I was shooting women and children. And I knew that both of them were lying. and then I realized, okay, we need some to be really, really skeptic about anything the media says about the Middle East, because I've seen it personally, how the media lies about what I'm doing.
That's an intense version of what most people discover with the media. If there's a subject they know something about and they see it on television, they go, that's not right. And you've experienced that firsthand on a personal, intense level. So do you actually trust any media anymore at all, anywhere?
It's very difficult. It is very, very difficult. You see, there are some media organizations that are easier to trust, but basically you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And I do prefer when a journalist is showing both sides of the argument instead of ignoring one side and focusing on just on one side. If I see a media report that totally ignores what could have been the other side, then some alarm bells are going off.
So who are we supposed to get for our primary source? Are we supposed to Al Jazeera, the Voice of America? Are you supposed to take all of them and aggregate them? How are you supposed to work it out?
Well, don't forget Israeli news as well, and that even within Israeli news you can go to different sources and get extremely different views. I have my favorite vendor of news from there, who I can trust to have more, I think, balanced view of the world and representing both views of the world. But I don't think there is such a thing, and you need to talk to the people on both sides of the conflict to understand what's going on. I don't know if you should go and ask Gaddafi for his point of view, but I'm pretty confident that I know the news reports about that side of the story are pretty solid. But otherwise, you can't just assume that what you're hearing is the full story.
So with what happened to you, was that a wake-up call about the media for you, or had you been sceptical and pretty mistrustful of general media before that?
Well, I was very mistrustful of media stories that didn't cater to my preconceptions. So if I believed in something and there was a media story, let's say from Al Jazeera or the US, that conflicted with my beliefs, then no, they can't be right, and they're lying and they're biased. And on the other hand, I did believe in things that were said in media sources, that is when they said things that my preconceptions that agreed with my preconceptions. Once I had that wake-up call, I started doubting those media vendors who were feeding into my preconceptions, which I then realized were not correct.
When I'm watching CNN and they get the two polar opposites, like someone from the Israeli Defense Department and someone from the Palestinian uprising, they're just going at each other. It's not really helping, because and the person's not moderating it properly. Does anyone benefit from that kind of thing? Because you walk away going, both sides are pretty crazy, and that's what you tend to think sometimes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was actually interviewed to the CNN by the CNN in 2001 in exactly the same what you're saying, and it puts you in a room in front of the camera. You don't even get to see your opponent or the person who disagrees with you, who's in a different city in a different camera, and
they're in the same boat.
Yeah, and then in the same boat. You don't get an argument which you would have had if both people would be in the same room, and it's very hard to get messages across. And I came out of that feeling, I got to say my piece, therefore it's a good thing. Not necessarily a good thing for the viewer, but it does allow people from opposing sides to present their view if there's a balanced mediator or the interviewer from CNN, for example, and giving both sides enough room to say. The main problem with those kind of interviews is what happens if the person who was chosen by the organization, let's say Israel or the Palestinian, is not as good as the other person in presenting views. So you judge based on the person who was interviewed, not based on what actually happened on the ground. and that's where the problem lies.
If you want to find out more of your experience with the Middle East media, what's your website or blog?
Oh, I don't blog about those kind of things. You could find out about my personal history in the Middle East if you Google my name, Ishai Sagi, Ishai, but then you need to omit a certain Microsoft product that I work with and I do blog about, because otherwise you'll see a lot of technical articles. So you may want to add to the Google search things like Israel or Army or things like that.
Okay, well, look, what do you make of the, from an international perspective, what's going on here today? And I'll let you get back to your lunch in a minute. I'm sorry for taking you away. Yeah, what do you make of our day here?
It's fantastic. It's good to meet like-minded people and who are very inquisitive, very open-minded, and wanted to hear and improve what we're doing in Australia from a skeptic point of view.
Yeah, well, thank you. Oh, and at our very open-minded day, someone's telling us to shut up, so I'll enjoy your day.
Good day.
Look, as is traditional at any skeptical event, I only talk to Dave the Happy Singer during lunch breaks, don't I?
Oh, yeah, always during while I'm eating.
Yeah, like last time it was at TAM there, and now you've got this great thing going on here with people doing their own thing. I'm loving the grassroots feel of this, and I love a 15-minute talk. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. I like the bite-sized thing as well. You know, sometimes the longer talks, you're drifting in and out, especially if you've been having a busy day and stuff, and the bite-sized 15-minute format works really well. The other thing I really like about having two rooms is that you can plan your own day. You know, for every session, you can choose which you want to see. You can build up your own personalised plan for the day, and your day isn't going to be the same as the person next to you. So when we get to the pub in the evening, we've not all seen the same thing. There's going to be plenty for us to talk about, and we've got Cupcake Camp going on right now.
Yeah, now actually, how are you swinging with the Cupcake Camp here? I see you've gone for the chocolate with the small Smarties on top.
That's right. That's one of our two contenders. We've also got some Baileys flavours ones in the competition here. And Cupcake Camp is like Bar Camp but for cakes. And we've got several contenders. They brought their cakes along to enter for the competition.
Have any of them got any acid in them?
I don't
any
think
LSD? I was hoping for some LSD cakes.
No, but you could just take one and pretend to be crazy.
That will be my excuse
to be fair, Maynard, who's going to notice the difference?
That's right. Now, what has actually surprised you today? Apart from some of the great cupcakes, like what topics have been brought up or what have people mentioned where you're going, get under the house? I didn't expect that.
I'm trying to think. There's been a lot of standard skeptical fare. I've yet to be really blown sideways by any of them.
We're only halfway through yet.
That's true. Now, we've got exciting things coming up, and I keep finding that the other room seems to have something really exciting going on. I'm watching it on Twitter.
Well, yeah, because other rooms got a different, less of a lecture feel, people feel more free to go, hang on, that's not right.
And that's part of the Bar Camp thing is the idea that it's not just one way. And you know, the whole Bar Camp Skepticamp was a response to how we could do things differently from a traditional conference. And one is, it is a two-way medium. Yeah. So we roughly say 10 minutes presentation, 5 minutes questions, but that's flexible. And we've got people shouting out, you know.
Hey, is there something you want to see covered today that we haven't covered yet? I mean, I want to see some chemtrails brought up. I want to see the earthquake machine mentioned. Hasn't come up yet.
I'd like to see more talk about the Stop the AVN. As you know, that's one of my hobby horses.
It's almost as if I get the feeling with the AVN issue that some people feel that has been won and they feel they want to move on, or, oh yeah, we've done enough on that. But that's certainly not, you would not think that at all.
I still think there's a long way to go. It's going to be difficult to know when to say mission accomplished. I think we've already achieved so much. The big problem of the media granting her automatic credibility every time there's a vaccination story, that's over. That battle's been won.
Yeah, I think for a while there it was just like they were desperate to have a so-called other side, or show another side to it, and getting the false bias, and you think that's been fixed?
I think in the case of the AVN it has. It's always a problem with journalists because they're trained to bring bias. To bring balance and to avoid bias. But in the matter of scientific topics, sometimes there aren't two sides to the story. Ken MacLeod from Stop the AVN gives the example of navigation and says, why would you invite a flat earther to come along to talk about navigation just because it provides balance? And that's the same thing with the AVN.
Look, I'll let you get done. Now, are you having one of the quantum cupcakes I saw earlier, which means that it may already have been eaten?
That is, it's in a box, and it is both eaten and not eaten at the same time, and only until I observe it can I know.
So that would actually be a real case of having your cake and eating it too, because it's a quantum cake. That's what they've been talking about all these years. Now I know.
Yeah,
a quantum cake is one you can have and eat too.
If only Schrödinger had baked cupcakes, we'd have settled this decades ago.
Well, my brain hurts.
Hello everyone, I'm Sasha Pixley and I'm here to talk to you about Skeptical. That's the 2011 Northern California Conference for Science and Skepticism. It takes place Sunday, May 29th at the Doubletree Hotel in Berkeley. We're going to have some great speakers, including Dr. Eugenie Scott of the NCSE, Dr. Bob Carroll, creator of the Skeptics Dictionary, Yao Man Shan and Mark Edward from the Skeptologists, and many, many more. Tickets are $45, or you can sign up with a t-shirt for $60. For more information, please visit the website www.skepticalcon.org.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what it takes, or what, in my experience, what it's taken me so far to reach this level of knowledge about the skeptical movement and what we're all about. Now, there's no scale for this. You know, I can't go to some university and get a degree which says I have reached this level of knowledge in skepticism. But what I do know, I'll try impart to you how I got to this stage, and it may help you along the way. So if you're going to make notes, this might be the time to get pens and papers ready, because I'm going to mention some resources which I personally can recommend and have found very valuable. The first thing is I want to talk about is it's really difficult, and it takes a long time to get a certain level of skeptical knowledge and to at least know a little bit about the topic and what you're talking about. Part of the problem is the topic is wide and varied. Everything from aliens to zombies. When you're a general skeptic or a media skeptic or a spokesman for the skeptical movement or a spokesperson, you're expected to know an awful lot about an awful lot. So some of the things that I've found invaluable in my past 10 or 15 years getting to this level, the books that I can sincerely recommend to you are mostly by James Randi, as it turns out. Now, many of you, of course, I'm preaching to converted somewhat. I'm sure many of you know these books very well, but we can start with Flim Flam, which is an excellent book to start you off on skepticism. And my favourite part about Flim Flam are where at the end of the book, there's all sorts of investigations which Randi recounts firsthand. Fascinating. Fascinating the way he set up investigations and tests into the paranormal. Flim Flam is a really interesting book, and I sincerely recommend it. The next one on the list would be Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. That can get your blood boiling. And there's an amazing chapter there, or as Carl Sagan would say, an amazing chapter on witchcraft and witch burning and things like this. Frightening. But it shows you what happens when belief takes over from rationality. It's really worth reading. More books by James Randi. The Mask of Nostradamus is a great book because it shows you how Randi goes about investigating these claims. And it's a wonderful example of someone who's not an armchair skeptic saying this is rubbish. I think this is rubbish. Here's my book. He went to extraordinary lengths to investigate the claims of Nostradamus and Nostradamus himself, his history. He went to France. He did all this sort of thing so he could get the best possible book. And it's a good lesson for us all in how to look at these things. Another book he wrote is The Truth About Uri Geller, which again is a good investigation into Uri Geller. Because don't forget, in the day he was the man. He was the most important paranormal alternative explanation, otherworldly figure in the world. You can't underestimate how amazingly significant this man's impact was on the times in the 1970s. And the other book I could sincerely recommend, and a book that I refer to often, and I've got on my reading list to read yet again is the Full Facts Book of Cold Reading by Ian Rowland. Now, if you want to know, or if anybody ever asks you, how does a fortune, I went to a psychic and she knew all about me, etc., 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 the worst thing you can do is say something like, oh yeah, well, they're not real, they use body language, or something like that. It's a fascinating voyage into psychology, cold reading. And one of my notes I'll get to in a moment is making sure that if you want to be a good skeptic, you go and you have readings done on yourself. The more you do that, the more you learn the psychology of it. I sincerely recommend that you buy a copy, or at least rent a copy, or steal a copy of Cosmos by Carl Sagan. It's a wonderful background in general science and the skeptical, rational thinking. It's hardly dated. It's like the cold reading book. I read it again. I watch Cosmos again. The message is still rings true. So some of the facts have changed, of course. Science progresses, but the basic history and understanding is very sound. Other documentaries you might look at are James Randi in Australia, where he tests the water diviners. Can certainly recommend that. And I think that's still available online, or Tim Mendham out the front can help you out there. The Secrets of the Psychics, another one where James Randi travels to Russia, is a very good documentary. Secrets of the Psychics, and I think that's available online. And but now, so saying, it's very important to know all that, especially the psychology of cold reading and things like that. But it's really important that you read or look at or listen to stuff from the other side. I can't stress this enough. And what I'm going to do to end this talk presently is I'll just review some of the notes I'm doing at the moment. I'm watching a lecture on homeopathic vaccination. And it's mind-numbing, but it's really important that I do it. I have a vast collection, personal video collection, thousands of hours of this sort of stuff. Crop circle documentaries. You have to sit through them, and you hear the explanations they give. New Age lectures. It's hard to sit through, but you have to do it. UFO documentaries, and particularly from the 1970s. They're particularly interesting because what they say is basically any day now, the world's on the verge. We're just about to find out. This is it. And it's never happened. But it's good to see what the thinking was at the time. Anti-vaccination documentaries and talks, and as we said, homeopathic lectures. You also learn about how they get to their conclusions. Why do they think the things they think? And if somebody asks me about how does homeopathy work or seem to work, at least I'd know more than the average person, because I've seen the damn documentaries that they've put out themselves, which shows me their thinking. Now, getting out there as a skeptic, as I said before, it's very important that you do things like, if you want to know what you're talking about, you have readings, you go to psychics or people claiming psychic power, and they'll do a reading on you. You learn an awful lot. Every time someone does a reading on me or casts a horoscope, I learn more and more about the way their mind works. Very important. I've gone to haunted houses and ghost investigations, ghost tours. It can be frivolous, but again, I learn something every time I do it. And as many of you might know, I frequently go to Mind, Body, Wallet shows, dragging people like Joe Benamu with me. Now, again, I've been in Sydney. I've been going for 10 years, twice a year. But every now and then we'll bust someone. We'll find someone with an outrageous fraud or making a terrible claim, and at least we can try to do something about it. So, one of the things that really annoy me, I must say, in this journey, and I don't claim to know everything there is to know about what we do. I mean, nobody can. I learn as much as I can, and I've still got a lot to learn. I guess I've reached a certain level. That's because I've been devoted to the subject for the past 10 or so years. What gets to me is when people say, engage in a conversation or an argument, and they'll say, I was the world's biggest skeptic, but... It's surprising how often people say that to me, as if that's it. They've won the argument because they were like me. They were a skeptic, you see. Recently I've just thought of a comeback to that, especially in public. If people say that, I look at them and say, "Really? I don't see you at the meetings." I was the world's biggest skeptic, or I am the world, or my husband, he was the world's biggest skeptic, but he went to my psychic, and so on and so on and so forth. Again, it's an ongoing process. You must give equal time, I think, to learning basic science, basic scientific disciplines, how the world really works, and basic physics helps, the conservation of energy and stuff. It can help you in these matters, but also sitting through these long documentaries, these books from the other side, which are completely from the other side, which pay no mind to, what we call science or reason. Now, as I said before, currently I am reviewing the DVD from Homeopathy Plus, which Joe mentioned earlier. This DVD is called Homeopathy for Health and Immunization plus the Treatment of Vaccine Damage. Homeopathy Plus are in league, hand in glove with the Australian Vaccination Network. And indeed, this video of an hour and a half or whatever it is, there's another DVD you can sort of get on the same page, which is Meryl Dorey giving her. So they're hand in glove. The vaccination people, beg your pardon, the Australian Homeopathy Plus people totally side with Meryl Dorey. Vaccines are bad and evil. So, page 1 of notes, page 2, page 3, there's time coding. This is just absolutely vital that someone sit down and note all the statements they make, do some research, and then we can hopefully have something to come back with them through the government or whatever, because they're flogging this on their website still for $12.50. All right, just a few notes. And I've learned so much by watching this thing. It's hard going, but at least I've learned something from it. This is just my notes as I've written them. I haven't formally written them yet. This is part of the Do No Harm initiative. Homeopathy can be used to help with vaccine damage. Homeopathy can treat serious problems. Disease is a disturbance of the bioenergy of the body. I couldn't help, and I've made a little note here, Star Wars. They honestly think there's a force within us which homeopathy talks to, which heals the body. My next note says babble. Babble. Sometimes it just really is babble. They go on and on about the law of similars, which is the in homeopathy, if something can cause a symptom, it can treat a symptom. In other words, if you have a high fever, well, what causes you to sweat? Hot peppers. All right, we'll give you hot peppers and that can fix your fever. And it's all based on the energy of the peppers or whatever it is, succussed and shaken, and I think you all know about that process. So we're talking about the energy imprint in the water when consumed will talk to your body's energy field, which will fix your problems. And also, more importantly, from Homeopathy Plus point of view, it will protect you against disease. It will vaccinate you. They make absolutely no bones about this. There's no two ways that you can read this from their lecture. You can protect yourself and your children from harmful, contagious diseases with homeopathy. It will go into your body. It will talk to your body's energetic biofield and protect your body from the disease, which you only get sick because the disease will alter your force in your body, your biofield, your energy medicine. And I keep harping on about it's all energy medicine. In fact, they say here, she goes on, well, of course scientists have a problem with homeopathy when they look through their microscopes because they're looking for chemicals. Homeopathy works on energy. So I'm up to, it's an hour and a half lecture, I'm up to the 54-minute mark. They talk about studies, which is good because at least I can look up those studies. They talk about the fact that homeopathic vaccinations can be made from the blood or saliva of somebody with the disease. So if somebody's got polio and they spit into a jar and you succuss that, you can get the energy of the polio then you can give that sugar pill to a child, and then the body will take care of the rest. Look, for the most part, being a skeptic is good. I really enjoy it. I mean, I have an awful lot of fun. I meet the most incredible people that you could ever hope to meet, the most wonderful scientists and entertainers and all sorts of things in the world. But to earn those stripes, for me at any rate, is the hard yards of going out, investigating firsthand, reading the literature, trying to understand it, and sitting through and reading what the other side put out, have to say, how they justify their thinking. So if you want to get far in this skeptical thinking, be prepared to sit down and do that. Podcasts are a good way to do that too. Don't underestimate podcasts. Skeptoid is a good podcast. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, that sort of thing. Thank you, and I think we've got a minute or two for questions. Yeah.
How do you prevent the sort of manipulative tactics used in much of that media from acting upon you? And how do you keep yourself completely rational in the face of such persuasive sort of, yes, it's good, and it's working on a subconscious sort of level?
I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Knowing good basic science and grounding yourself can help a lot, because when someone puts something to you that sounds absolutely true, but from your research and knowledge of basic science, you know it can't be, like it contravenes the laws of inverse squares or the conservation of energy or whatever. That's good. Even if sometimes I'll hear something and I just don't know. I honestly don't know. Can that be true, or what's the case? And I think Tim Mendham, there he is, was saying earlier, if you don't know, the best thing is to say you don't know. I'll try to find out, something like that. But yeah, sometimes it's difficult. Yeah.
Knowing what you know about cold reading and the kind of techniques used, how do you behave when you go into a reading?
Honestly, I never lie, but I don't give anything away. And as soon as they start asking me questions, I might even say, you're asking me. You're asking me? You
don't sort of put a front on and just see what happens? Or
I don't put a front on. No. Well, everyone knows who I am.
Not the guy from the one.
Exactly. If I have a reading, which doesn't happen often these days, I mean, I can't pretend to be Fred Smith from down the street. You know, they know I'm who I am. But I'm never dishonest in them. I just hold them to account. I say, if you're using psychic powers, then I expect you to tell me statements, not ask me questions about this, that, or the other. What? Yep.
What's your good one-stop, all-purpose woo collector? If you've got to go to one spot to get it, like what one podcast would you recommend, one film, one book? Is there one, if you haven't got a lot of time on a weekly basis, what's the best podcast to get the other side?
To get the other side?
Yeah, is there one...
A podcast? You've got me there. I don't know about a podcast, a woo podcast. The one-stop shop for woo in general is the Mind, Body, Spirit. Yeah, absolutely. You spend 2 hours there, you've got enough woo to last you the next 6 months. Nova Magazine. Thank you. Yes, I wasn't thinking. Nova Magazine and New Dawn. I think it's called New Dawn. Free magazines you find outside or health food stores or something. Absolutely. That's one of the things I should have written on an invaluable resource. I get mine every month when it comes out, and I sit through and I look through it to see what's happening. Absolutely. Yeah.
Skeptico is a really good podcast if you want to listen to somebody who's nuts.
Skeptico. I've been interviewed by Skeptico. Yes.
Yeah, he gets all the crazy people.
And me. And I think that's our time up, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, bro.
Hey, bro. What's this message you sent me about $1 million?
SkepticBros.com have finally cracked it. A detection device that will prove the existence of the paranormal.
What?
Let me show you.
Hey! Ow! Ah! Why are we in a cupboard?
Check it out. A new placebo band.
And it's glowing.
Yes! In the dark. That's when the ghosts are about. We're gonna win Randy's $1 million.
I'm going home. Let me out.
Can't. Cupboard only opens from the outside.
No!
Go to Skeptic Bros. Get a glow-in-the-dark placebo band. Where you gonna go? SkepticBros.com.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. I'm sure my cold's almost gone by now. Coming up on next week's show, a few more little snippets and clippets from Skepticamp I couldn't squeeze into this week's show, so if you didn't hear yourself and you know that Maynard interviewed you, fear not. It should be coming up on next week's show. And also I sincerely hope that we have the think tank back again. Was going to have it this week, but illness got in the way. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, and all the other superstitions for the think tank coming back on next week's show. Time for another hot cup of lemon tea. And until then, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.